So you've probably seen those headlines flying around, right? About Chinese researchers supposedly cracking RSA encryption with quantum computers.
Yeah, those definitely made some waves.
Exactly. And maybe that news felt a bit, I don't know, urgent or maybe just confusing.
Understandable. There's a lot of technical stuff mixed in with, well, potential hype.
Right. So today we're really going to dive into this. Our mission basically is to get a proper handle on what these claims actually mean.
Uh-huh. How valid are they?
Yeah, and what are the implications, for data security, for things like Bitcoin even. We'll be looking at the reports, especially from the South China Morning Post, and what cybersecurity experts are saying.
Trying to separate the signal from the noise.
Exactly. Give you a clear picture without drowning you in jargon.
And it's fascinating, isn't it? This whole interplay between what's theoretically possible with quantum and what we can actually do now.
Totally. Let's start with RSA itself. Remind us quickly.
Sure. So RSA Revest, Shamir, Adelman, the inventors. It's been the bedrock of online security for decades. Think secure shopping, email, all that
A
stuff.
little padlock icon.
Pretty much, yeah. Its strength comes from math, specifically multiplication versus factoring. It's easy to multiply two massive prime numbers,
Okay.
but incredibly hard for a regular computer to take that huge result and work backwards to find the original primes.
Yeah.
Especially as the numbers get bigger. That difficulty is the core of RSA security.
Okay, so RSA is like this super tough lock, and the fear is that quantum computers are getting close to making a master key.
That's the analogy, yes. Which brings us to this rather dramatic term you sometimes hear, Q-Day.
Q-Day, or the quantum apocalypse. Sounds pretty serious. What would that actually look like?
Well, if, and it's still a big if, sufficiently powerful quantum computers could break RSA, the fallout could be massive.
How so?
Think about all the encrypted data stored over years.
Yeah.
Intelligence agencies, companies, individuals, suddenly potentially unlocked. That could cause, serious geopolitical ripples, expose incredibly sensitive information. It's a scenario that definitely raises eyebrows.
And it's not just state secrets, is it? You mentioned Bitcoin earlier. How does that fit in?
Right. So Bitcoin doesn't use RSA directly, but the kind of cryptography it does use, elliptic curve cryptography, is also theoretically vulnerable to quantum computers.
Ah, okay.
So if a quantum computer got powerful enough, it could, in theory, break Bitcoin security and allow theft. That's why the crypto world watches quantum developments very closely.
Makes sense. Now, the South China Morning Post, they've published a few things on this. Let's maybe look back first. I remember one report a couple of years back causing a stir.
Yes, I remember that one. It suggested Chinese researchers had found new decryption algorithms, hinting they were close to cracking, national security level stuff. But when experts actually looked at the paper, it seemed to confuse different types of algorithms. It didn't actually show any real advantage for breaking standard encryption, more like a theoretical mix-up.
Okay. Then there was that other one last October about cracking military-grade encryption on a D-Wave computer. That sounded big too, but details were scarce.
They were very scarce. The article didn't link directly to the paper. And it turned out the paper, which was in Chinese, wasn't actually about breaking standard encryption at all.
What was it about then?
It described making a different algorithm calculate something more efficiently using quantum methods, not cracking encryption. Stan Kaminsky from Kaspersky famously called it a quantum of lies.
A quantum of lies. Okay, that says a lot.
It does. It highlights how misleading some of the reporting can be.
And it feels like there might be a pattern, maybe? These reports popping up alongside this narrative that China is racing ahead in quantum, maybe even leapfrogging Google or IBM.
That context is absolutely crucial, yes. It's a global quantum race, no doubt. These reports land in that competitive environment.
So let's turn to the most recent one, the South China Morning Post report that's got everyone talking again.
Right. This is the one claiming factorization of an 80-bit RSA number.
And, more dramatically, reporting factorization of a 2048-bit number. There's even a paper title mentioned. A first successful factorization of RSA 2048 integer by D-Wave quantum computer. Sounds like a huge deal.
It sounds massive on the surface, but we need to break it down. First off, the computer they reportedly used, a D-Wave.
Okay. What's special about D-Wave?
It's really important to understand. D-Wave makes a specific type of quantum computer. It's called an annealer. It's actually made by a Canadian company.
Chinese?
The hardware itself, no. And it's not a universal quantum computer like Google or IBM are building. Think of it like a specialized power tool versus a whole general toolkit.
Okay. So different tools for different jobs.
Exactly. The D-Wave annealer is designed to be very good at specific optimization problems, finding the best solution among many possibilities. Universal quantum computers aim to run a much wider range of algorithms, including Shor's algorithm, which is the one famous for theoretically breaking RSA. Different machines, different capabilities.
Got it. And the report mentioned hybrid algorithms. What's that about?
Yeah, hybrid basically means teamwork. A classical computer and the quantum computer, the D-Wave annealer in this case, working together.
How does that work?
You could think of the quantum part handling one very specific, computationally tough piece of the puzzle, maybe the optimization part annealers are good at. While the classical computer manages the overall process, the setup, putting the results together, it's not purely quantum cracking.
Right, a collaboration. Now, these numbers, 80-bit, 2048-bit, put those in perspective for us. How secure are the keys we actually use?
Good question. The bit length is the key size.
Mm-hmm.
Longer means harder to crack. Today, standard secure RSA uses keys way longer than 80 bits, usually 2048 bits or even more.
Okay.
And just for context, the record for breaking RSA with conventional supercomputers is 829 bits. That took something like 2,700 CPU years.
Wow, 2,700 years of computer time.
Yeah, an enormous effort. So that brings us back to this 2048-bit claim.
It still sounds impressive, even if it was hybrid.
It does. But here's the crucial detail. The paper apparently describes factoring a very, very specific kind of 2048-bit number.
How specific?
One where the two prime factors were artificially close together, differing by just 2 bits, which is highly unusual for real-world RSA keys. And the code they developed apparently only works for this specific contrived case.
Ah, so it couldn't break just any 2048-bit key.
Exactly. It's not a general method for the kind of 2048-bit keys used in real encryption. It's like finding the trick for one very specific type of lock, not a master key for all locks of that size.
That definitely changes the story. Why highlight that result then? Any thoughts?
Well, you could speculate. Does it signal progress, even if limited? Does it influence perceptions, funding, attract talent? It certainly gets attention.
Okay, what about the 80-bit claim? That sounds tiny compared to 2048.
It is tiny. 80-bit RSA is considered completely insecure today. You can crack it literally in seconds on a decent modern laptop using standard classical methods.
Seconds on a laptop.
Yep. Which raises the obvious question. Why would you even need a quantum computer, even a hybrid D-Wave approach, to do something a laptop can do almost instantly?
Good point. It sort of undermines the quantum breakthrough angle for that part, doesn't it?
It strongly suggests the quantum element might not have been the critical factor for cracking the 80-bit number. It could have been done classically much more easily.
So, putting this all together, while the headlines were alarming, the actual threat of quantum computers breaking our current crypto, it seems further off.
That's definitely the consensus among most cybersecurity experts. Look, the theoretical threat is real. We absolutely need to develop and deploy quantum-resistant cryptography. That work is happening.
Right. Post-quantum cryptography.
Exactly. But actually building a quantum computer with enough stable, error-corrected qubits, the basic units of quantum computation to break something like RSA 2048, that's still a massive engineering challenge.
Qubits are like the quantum version of bits, but fragile.
Kind of. They're powerful, but very sensitive to noise and errors. You need lots of them. And they need to be high quality and interconnected in complex ways with error correction. We're likely further away from that than we are from using quantum computers for other things, like designing new materials or complex chemical simulations.
This makes me think there's that old Chinese strategy, right? Make a sound in the East, then strike in the West. Could all this public focus on quantum computing, these potentially exaggerated claims, be a strategic thing, maybe draw attention and resources that way, while making quieter progress elsewhere?
It's certainly a possibility worth considering. Strategic misdirection is an old tactic. Could the noise around quantum serve to distract while China advances strongly in other critical areas, like, say, AI or semiconductor production?
And we are seeing projections about China becoming a leader in chip manufacturing, aren't we?
Yes, the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation projected that. And you have examples like Huawei recently releasing a new AI chip. Reports suggest it rivals NVIDIA's power, computationally speaking.
Even if it uses more energy, apparently.
Right, that was mentioned too. Higher power consumption, but comparable compute power. And at the same time, you see China promoting free trade, positioning itself as a source of global stability. It could all be part of a larger strategic picture.
Interesting angle. Now, just to cover all bases, the original source material we looked at, one of the articles, it also briefly mentioned privacy and NordVPN.
Yes. It positioned NordVPN as a tool, for enhancing online security, protecting data, and also for getting around geographical content restrictions.
Right. And there was a specific offer mentioned, a link and a code.
Correct. That's pretty common, isn't it? Seeing how these discussions about tech security can sometimes link up with commercial products and services in the digital space.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. Summarizing our deep dive, these recent reports about China cracking RSA, they're a lot more nuanced than the headlines suggested.
Definitely. You have to look at the type of quantum computer used, the DUA annealer, the very specific, almost artificial cases of RSA numbers that were factored.
And the fact that 80-bit RSA is trivial anyway for classical computers.
Exactly. So the real practical threat from quantum computers, breaking the encryption we rely on daily, it's still a future challenge, not a present reality based on these reports.
So the aha moment here is really about that gap, isn't it? Between the theoretical power of quantum computing and where the technology actually is today.
Precisely. And the importance of looking critically at these kinds of announcements, distinguishing real breakthroughs from, well, maybe strategic positioning or even just misunderstandings.
Which leads to a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on. Thinking about those broader strategic implications. When nations focus their tech efforts differently, what else might be going on? Could advancements in one field be enabling something else entirely? Are the narratives we hear about tech races and national competition telling the whole story? Something to think about as we watch this all unfold.